I saved a giant Apache woman. The next day, her tribe decided my future. That morning, he woke up before sunrise, the chill of the desert air making him pull his jacket tighter around his shoulders. He had packed lightly, only what was necessary for a day hike, some water, a small backpack, and his journal. As he stepped out, the first rays of sunlight painted the rocks and sand in shades of gold and pink. The silence was almost sacred, broken only by the soft whisper of the wind through the canyon. He followed a narrow trail that twisted along the edge of a deep canyon. The rocks were uneven, the path dusty and worn by years of travelers and animals, but John loved every step. He was careful with his footing, sometimes stopping to examine the strange desert plants or watch a hawk circle high above. It was during one of these pauses, as he leaned against a sun-warmed rock to catch his breath, that he heard it, a sharp, desperate scream that seemed to shake the air. At first, John froze. The desert was full of noises, birds, the wind, small animals, but this was different. This was human. He didn't hear it again immediately, but he could feel a pulse of fear mixed with urgency. He glanced around, trying to locate the source. The canyon walls rose on either side of him, narrow in places, wide in others, with crevices and shadows that could hide anything. Then he heard it again, louder this time. The scream came from above, from a ledge that looked impossible to climb. Instinct took over. John started to climb the rocky slope, moving carefully, testing each foothold. His heart was racing, but he pushed aside fear. Whoever or whatever was up there needed help. As he reached the edge of a small cliff, he could finally see her. She was enormous, at least twice the height of an average person, and even though she looked powerful, she was pinned under a massive fallen tree. Her hands struggled against the heavy branches, her face twisted in pain, her hair falling in wild, dark waves across her shoulders. She looked like a giant from an old storybook, and yet John could see the fear in her eyes. He took a deep breath. He knew this wasn't going to be easy. The branches were heavy, twisted, and lodged firmly against the rocks. One wrong move could crush him or her. But John couldn't stand there and do nothing. He looked around for a leverage point, a rock or stick to help pry the branches. There was nothing perfect, only smaller rocks and sticks that might work if he tried carefully. He knelt down, picking up the largest stick he could find. His hands shook slightly as he wedged it under the tree. The giant woman watched him suspiciously. She didn't speak but let out a low, trembling groan. John tried to catch her eye and nod reassuringly. He whispered softly, "I'm going to help you. I won't hurt you." He had no idea if she understood him, but it seemed to calm her just a little. Slowly, he began to lever the branches, testing each movement to make sure it wouldn't snap suddenly. Sweat ran down his face in the desert heat and his arms ached, but he refused to give up. He kept thinking about how trapped she was, how every second counted. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the branches shifted slightly. He used the small rocks to keep them lifted, giving the giant woman room to pull herself free. She pushed with her immense strength, and slowly she slid out from under the heavy trunk. Her body was long and powerful, her limbs strong like an athlete's. John stepped back, barely believing he had done it. The woman stood, towering above him, brushing herself off. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, in a gesture almost gentle, she nodded once, a silent thank you. John exhaled, relief flooding through him. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly from tension. She didn't respond, only glanced at him, her eyes sharp but not angry. It was strange, seeing someone so big yet so vulnerable moments before. He realized how easily life could turn in an instant. One wrong step, one falling branch, and it could have been a tragedy. For a few minutes they stood there, studying each other. The giant woman seemed cautious but no longer frightened. She flexed her shoulders, testing her strength, then gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. John felt a strange connection, a silent understanding that he had saved a life, and that life was enormous in more ways than one. He wanted to ask her where she was from, who she was, but he knew some things were better left unspoken until trust was built. As the sun climbed higher, John realized he needed to continue on his journey, but he also couldn't just leave her without knowing she was truly safe. He looked around for signs of danger, snakes, scorpions, unstable rocks, but there was none. The canyon was silent again, the wind carrying dust in slow spirals across the dry sand. The giant woman took a step toward him, then another, maintaining a careful distance, but not leaving. It was almost as if she was deciding whether to trust him fully. John remembered the water he had in his backpack. He pulled out a bottle and extended it toward her. She hesitated, then took it with one enormous hand, careful not to crush it. She drank slowly, her eyes never leaving his. He watched her, fascinated by every movement, the way her muscles worked, the way her fingers curved around the bottle. It was mesmerizing, almost surreal, yet entirely real. Finally, she seemed satisfied. She set the bottle down and nodded toward the path she had appeared from. It was clear she intended to leave, but her gesture told John she would not forget his help. He gave a small wave and whispered, "Take care." She mirrored his gesture, a wave that was almost regal in its simplicity, and then she turned and disappeared into the brush. John stood there for a long time, feeling the weight of what had just happened. He had helped someone in need, someone unlike anyone he had ever met. The desert was vast, but in that moment it felt intimate, alive with possibilities. He knew he would remember this day forever, the fear, the effort, the relief, and the silent connection with the giant woman who had trusted him. As he continued along the trail, his mind replayed every detail. The scream, the fallen tree, the way her eyes had met his. He wondered who she was, why she was so far from her people, and what her story might be. There was a mystery in the desert, and he had been lucky enough to witness just one extraordinary part of it. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a strange sense of destiny, as if this encounter was only the beginning of something much larger. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the canyon floor. John's legs were tired, his arms sore, but his heart was light. He kept walking, taking careful steps, glancing back occasionally, half expecting to see her watching from a distance. The desert was quiet again, but John knew that life often hid the most extraordinary stories in the most unexpected places. And today he had lived one of them. The morning after John had helped the giant Apache woman, the desert seemed quieter than usual, almost as if it were holding its breath. John woke early, feeling the warmth of the sun on his back. He stretched and sipped the last of his water, thinking about the events of the previous day. He could not get the image of her towering figure out of his mind. The way her eyes had met his, the strength in her arms, and the silent gratitude in her nod. It had been unlike anything he had ever experienced, and he felt both exhilarated and cautious. He packed his small backpack and started down the trail again, trying to keep his thoughts focused on the path ahead. But as he walked, he noticed something unusual. The desert, normally empty at this time, seemed alive with movement in the distance. Shadows moved among the rocks, and dust rose from places where no wind had stirred it. At first, he thought it might be wildlife, but then he saw figures, several people approaching cautiously. They moved with purpose, but also with careful observation, as if studying him before deciding what to do next. John's heart quickened. He realized that the giant woman he had helped yesterday was not alone. These figures were humans, but their presence carried a weight, an authority he could not ignore. As they drew closer, he could see that they were members of a Native American tribe, most likely Apache. Their faces were serious, eyes sharp and assessing. They carried no weapons in a threatening manner, but the way they held themselves showed that they were ready to act if needed. John stopped in the middle of the path, raising his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. One of the elders, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and deep, knowing eyes, stepped forward. His name, John would later learn, was Naeli, the leader of the tribe. Naeli's presence was commanding, not because of size, but because of the confidence and wisdom he carried. The others formed a semicircle behind him, silent and watchful. John tried to smile nervously. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said softly. I helped someone yesterday. A woman. She was in danger." Naeli's eyes narrowed slightly. "You speak of the giant woman," he said in a calm but firm voice. John nodded, explaining exactly what had happened, how he had lifted the branches and freed her from the fallen tree. He tried to describe her immense size, the strength in her arms and the fear in her eyes. As he spoke, the tribe members exchanged glances, whispering quietly among themselves. John noticed the tension in the air. These were people who valued caution and tradition, and he was a stranger in their land, claiming to have interacted with one of their own. After John finished his explanation, there was a long, silent pause. Naeli looked at him closely, studying his face as if trying to read his soul. Then he spoke again, his voice steady and deliberate. "We have heard of your actions," he said. "Word travels quickly among our people. You saved her life, yes, but we do not know your heart. We do not know if you mean honor or harm." John swallowed hard. He realized that the tribe was not just questioning what he had done, they were questioning who he was. Naeli continued. "Our people respect courage, but courage alone does not prove worthiness. You must show that your intentions are pure, that your spirit respects ours and the land we call home. Only then will we decide what your place among us may be." John nodded eagerly. He wanted to show them that he was sincere, that he did not come as an intruder, but as someone who genuinely wished to help. He felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. This was no ordinary encounter. This was a test of character, a chance to prove himself to people who had watched over this land for generations. The tribe led him to a small clearing near a river, a place where the water flowed gently and the rocks formed natural seats. John noticed the careful arrangement of stones and plants, the subtle signs that this place had been prepared for important gatherings. Naeli gestured for him to sit on one of the rocks, and he obeyed. Around the clearing, members of the tribe sat silently, observing him with quiet intensity. John felt like he was being measured, evaluated in ways he could not fully understand. Then Naeli spoke of the tasks John would need to complete. They were not ordinary tasks. Each one was designed to test not just strength, but wisdom, patience, and respect for the world around him. First, he would need to demonstrate his understanding of the land by following tracks along the river to find signs of animals and plants, showing that he could move through the desert without causing harm. Next, he would face a challenge requiring balance and courage, a narrow canyon path over a steep drop, where one misstep could be dangerous. Finally, he would encounter a task that required observation and intelligence, interpreting signs and patterns in nature that the tribe used to survive in this harsh land. John accepted the challenges without hesitation, even though fear crept into his thoughts. He felt a strange thrill, knowing that this was more than a test of physical ability. It was a test of character, of heart, of respect. The first task, tracking along the river, seemed simple at first, but it required patience. He knelt to examine footprints, broken twigs, and bent grass, carefully noting the paths of deer, rabbits, and other creatures. The tribe watched silently, occasionally whispering among themselves. John realized that every action he took, every observation he made was being noticed. He had to be precise, careful, and thoughtful. After hours of tracking, he successfully identified the movement of a small herd of deer, noting how they had followed the river for water. Naeli nodded approvingly, a subtle sign that John was on the right path. The next challenge was the narrow canyon path. John approached it cautiously, feeling the wind whip across his face. The ledge was narrow, jagged rocks below, and any misstep could be dangerous. But he remembered the woman he had saved, the courage he had felt when he lifted the tree, and he forced himself to focus. Step by step, he moved along the ledge, balancing carefully, testing each foothold. His heart pounded, but he did not panic. When he reached the other side, the tribe let out quiet murmurs of approval. Naomi's eyes met his, and for a moment, John felt a deep connection, a recognition of effort and bravery. The final challenge involved understanding the signs of the desert. He had to interpret the direction of the wind, the behavior of birds, and the subtle changes in vegetation to determine where water sources were and how to move safely. John concentrated, observing every detail. Slowly, he pieced together the patterns, demonstrating not only intelligence but respect for the delicate balance of nature. By the time the sun began to set, painting the canyon in shades of gold and crimson, John had completed all the challenges. Exhausted, thirsty, and covered in dust, he stood before the tribe. Naomi approached, his expression calm but serious. "You have shown courage, patience, and wisdom," he said. "You have moved through our land with respect, and you have proven that your heart is not selfish. Yet there is one more step. You must understand that trust is not given lightly. You must live with us, learn from us, and show that your intentions remain honorable." John nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. This was no longer a simple encounter. It was an invitation, a turning point. The tribe had not only tested him, they had observed his spirit. The giant woman who had silently watched from the shadows stepped forward once more. Her eyes held warmth and approval. She had spoken on his behalf, silently vouching for his character, and now John felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. As night fell, the tribe built a small fire, and John sat near it, listening to the sounds of the desert crickets, the soft rustle of wind, and the occasional call of a distant owl. The giant woman shared stories in her language, and even though John could not understand all the words, he sensed the meaning through gestures and expressions. He realized that he was beginning to be accepted, not just for what he had done, but for who he was becoming in their eyes. By the time he finally lay down to rest, John felt a profound shift within himself. The desert had always been a place of adventure, but now it had become a place of learning, of connection, and of destiny. He knew that the next day his life would continue to change, guided by the decisions of the tribe who had witnessed his courage and heart. The giant woman's presence lingered in his mind, a reminder that even the smallest actions, performed with care and bravery, could shape the future in ways he could never imagine. The morning light spilled across the desert, turning the canyon rocks into shades of gold and amber. John woke slowly, feeling the ache in his muscles from the previous day's tests, but also a strange excitement. Today would be different. Today, he would face the heart of the tribe's challenges, tasks that would not only test his body, but his mind and spirit. As he stepped outside the small clearing where he had slept, he saw the giant woman waiting. She did not speak but nodded at him, a quiet encouragement that seemed to give him strength. The tribe gathered nearby, forming a circle. Naomi, the elder leader, stood at the center, his posture commanding respect. He looked at John with eyes that seemed to see far beyond the surface. "Today," he said, "you will prove that your heart, your mind, and your spirit are as strong as your courage. These tasks are not simple. They are designed to show whether you belong among us or whether you are merely passing through." John nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He felt both nervous and honored. He had already faced physical challenges, but he knew that what lay ahead would test something deeper. The first task was a lesson in patience and observation. Naomi led John to a rocky slope where water trickled down in small streams. "You must follow the movements of the land and the creatures that live here," Naomi explained. "Watch, learn, understand." John crouched on the rocks, studying the footprints left by animals, small rabbits, desert foxes, and the occasional deer. He observed the plants, noticing which grew near water and which preferred dry soil. The sun climbed higher and the heat made his skin sting, but John remained focused. Every detail mattered. He traced the trails, mapping in his mind how the animals moved, where they ate, and how they survived in the harsh desert environment. Hours passed. The tribe watched quietly, their eyes sharp but patient. John realized that the test was not just about tracking animals. It was about understanding balance. The desert was alive in ways he had never noticed before, and he began to see the beauty in its patterns. Small insects, birds, and the rustle of leaves told stories if one took the time to listen. By mid-afternoon, John had completed the observations and shared what he had learned. Naeli nodded, a small smile breaking across his face. "You see what many overlook," he said. "You notice the life around you and respect it. That is an important first step." Next came a challenge of courage and balance. Naeli led John to a narrow canyon path, suspended over a deep drop. Below, jagged rocks and shadows stretched as far as the eye could see. John felt a wave of fear. One misstep here could be dangerous. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of yesterday, the strength he had found in saving the giant woman. That courage still existed within him, he just needed to summon it. Step by step, he moved along the narrow ledge, testing each foothold. The wind whipped around him, tugging at his jacket and hair, but he remained steady. His heart pounded, and every muscle in his body strained with concentration. Halfway along the ledge, John paused, looking down at the depth below. His stomach churned, but he forced himself to focus on the path ahead. He imagined the desert not as a threat, but as a living test. He thought of the giant woman, the trust she had placed in him yesterday, and that gave him determination. Slowly, carefully, he reached the other side. The tribe, who had been watching silently, murmured quietly among themselves. Naeli's eyes met John's, and he gave a small, approving nod. It was more than just a physical victory. It was a demonstration of composure under pressure, of courage guided by thought rather than recklessness. The final task would test John's intelligence, intuition, and ability to understand the subtle signs of the world. Naeli led him to a quiet part of the canyon where the land shifted gently, and small plants and rocks created natural markers. "Here," Naeli said, "you must read the land as we do, observe, notice patterns, learn the secrets it holds." John crouched down, feeling the desert's warmth beneath his hands. He noticed how the sand shifted with the wind, how birds flew toward hidden water sources, and how certain plants leaned toward the sunlight in unusual ways. He traced the paths of small animals, recognizing the signs of their movements. Time seemed to stretch as John concentrated. Every detail mattered: the sound of leaves, the bend of a branch, the footprints in the sand. Slowly, he pieced together a map in his mind of the canyon's hidden resources, where water could be found, where food might grow, and where danger might lurk. It was not just a practical exercise. It was a test of respect, of learning to live in harmony with the land. John realized that the desert was teaching him patience, observation, and humility. He presented his findings to Naeli, explaining how the land guided him, how every creature and plant had a purpose. The tribe listened silently, impressed not only with John's observations, but with the way he spoke with reverence and humility. Naeli's expression softened. "You understand more than many who have lived here all their lives," he said. "You see life as it is, not as you wish it to be. That is the essence of trust." John felt a rush of relief and pride. He had faced fear, exerted his strength, and now demonstrated understanding and respect for the world around him. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the desert, the giant woman approached John once more. She stood tall, her presence commanding yet calm. She did not speak, but her eyes held a mixture of pride and approval. John realized that she had been observing him throughout the day, silently guiding and encouraging him. Her trust in him had not wavered, and now he felt a deep connection, a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. That evening, the tribe gathered around a large fire. Flames danced and cast flickering light across the rocks, highlighting the faces of those who had tested him. John sat quietly, listening as Naeli spoke. "You have shown courage, intelligence, patience, and respect," the elder said. "But trust is more than deeds. Trust is proven over time. You will live among us, and in living with us, you will continue to show your heart. The giant woman has spoken on your behalf. We will watch and we will decide if your spirit is true." John nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. This was not merely acceptance, it was a commitment, a beginning of a journey he could not fully anticipate. The giant woman moved closer, placing her hand on his shoulder, a gentle gesture of reassurance. In that instant, John felt a bond, not just with her, but with the tribe. He realized that life in the desert would not be easy, but it would be meaningful. He had been tested, and he had proven himself worthy to continue on this extraordinary path. The night grew quiet, the fire crackling softly. John watched the stars appear, one by one, in the vast desert sky. The silence was comforting, a reminder of the peace that comes from understanding and trust. He felt exhaustion in his body, but his mind was alive with possibility. The giant woman sat nearby, her presence both protective and encouraging, and John knew that he was on the threshold of a new chapter. As he drifted to sleep, he thought about the lessons of the day, the importance of patience, observation, and respect. He realized that true courage was not just physical, it was moral, spiritual, and emotional. By the time the first light of dawn touched the canyon walls, John was ready to face whatever challenges the tribe would bring next. He understood now that his journey was no longer solitary. He had allies, guidance, and a purpose that extended far beyond himself. The morning sun spilled softly over the desert, turning the rocks and sand into a glowing sea of gold. John awoke to the gentle rustle of wind through the canyon, the air carrying the scent of dry earth and sage. His body ached from the previous day's challenges, but his heart was full. He had proven courage, intelligence, and respect for the desert and its creatures, and now the tribe had begun to trust him. Today felt different, heavier with purpose and possibility. He stepped outside the small clearing where he had slept, and the giant Apache woman was already there, waiting quietly. Her presence was both calm and commanding, and John felt a strange sense of comfort in her silence. Naeli appeared soon after, moving gracefully despite his age. The elder's eyes were sharp and observing, but there was a glimmer of approval hidden beneath his serious expression. "Today," he said, "you will learn more about our people and our ways. Trust is not given lightly. You must live among us, listen, observe, and act with respect. Only then will you be truly accepted." John nodded. He had understood the tests of courage and intelligence, but now he realized this was about more than proving himself. It was about becoming part of a community, learning a way of life, and honoring a culture older than he could imagine. The tribe led John through the canyon paths, winding along narrow trails and open plains. As they walked, John observed everything: the way they moved silently over rocks, the careful way they placed each footstep, the subtle signs they left behind in the sand to communicate with one another. It was a lesson in humility and awareness. The giant woman stayed close, occasionally pointing out a plant or animal, explaining silently through gestures and expressions. John listened intently, soaking up every detail. He realized that living in harmony with this land required patience, attentiveness, and a respect that went beyond words. They arrived at a small village, hidden between rocks and trees, blending seamlessly with the desert landscape. Huts made from wood and clay stood in careful arrangement, smoke rising from small fires where food was being prepared. Children ran along the pathways, laughing and playing, while elders tended to gardens and small animals. The atmosphere was alive yet peaceful, a rhythm of life that had been cultivated for generations. John felt both awe and humility. He had never seen such a close-knit community, where every action seemed purposeful and every person mattered. The tribe invited him to sit by the fire, where food was shared in silence at first. John noticed the giant woman watching him carefully, ensuring he felt included. When he took the first bite, he was struck by the simplicity and flavor of the meal. It was nourishing, but more importantly, it felt like a ritual of connection. Eating together was not just about sustenance. It was about trust, belonging, and respect for what the land provided. John felt grateful, not just for the food, but for the opportunity to witness this way of life firsthand. After the meal, the giant woman gestured for John to follow her. She led him to a quiet area near a stream where water flowed gently over smooth stones. Here, she began to teach him the ways of the tribe, not through words alone, but through demonstration, patience, and care. She showed him how to find water hidden in the desert, how to identify edible plants, and how to move silently without disturbing the creatures around. John watched closely, imitating her movements, learning not just with his mind but with his body and heart. Each lesson was small, yet each carried a profound meaning. He began to understand that being part of the tribe was not just about surviving, it was about respecting the delicate balance of life in the desert. Throughout the day, John learned more about the people who had lived here for generations. The elders told stories of their ancestors, of battles fought, of challenges overcome, and of the land that had always provided for them. The giant woman translated some of these lessons through gestures, smiles, and expressions that spoke more than words could. John realized that history and memory were alive in this community, passed down through observation, action, and care. He felt honored to witness it, and a sense of responsibility began to settle in his heart. As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the village, John noticed the children approaching him. They were curious, playful, and unafraid. At first, he hesitated, unsure how to interact, but the giant woman encouraged him. He smiled and extended his hands, and soon he was teaching them small games, helping them balance on rocks, and listening to their laughter echo through the canyon. It was a small moment, but it filled him with warmth. He realized that acceptance was not only about proving oneself through challenges, it was about connecting, caring, and sharing in the daily life of the tribe. By evening, John was invited to sit with the elders around a larger fire. The giant woman joined him, her presence steady and reassuring. Naeli spoke to the group, explaining that John had proven himself through courage, intelligence, and respect. The elders nodded, some smiling subtly, others observing quietly, but all acknowledging his efforts. Then the tribe made a decision. They would welcome him, allowing him to live among them, learn from them, and share in their lives. It was a moment John had not dared to imagine when he first walked into the canyon, and yet here it was, a gift born of trust, bravery, and the choices he had made. The giant woman looked at John with approval, her eyes shining in the firelight. She had spoken on his behalf to the tribe, ensuring that his intentions and heart were understood. John felt a rush of gratitude and humility. He knew that acceptance was not guaranteed in life, and yet here, in this hidden desert community, he had found it. The warmth of the fire mirrored the warmth he felt inside, a sense of belonging that he had never known before. That night, John lay beneath the stars, listening to the soft whispers of the desert. The tribe slept nearby, the giant woman beside him, and he felt the rhythm of life around him. It was quiet but alive with energy and meaning. He realized that the tests, the challenges, and the lessons had led him here, to understanding, connection, and acceptance. For the first time, he felt that he was part of something larger than himself, a story unfolding in the vast, beautiful desert. As he drifted to sleep, John reflected on the journey so far. He had come to the desert seeking adventure, yet he had found trust, guidance, and a new family. He understood now that life was about more than courage or survival. It was about respect, empathy, and the willingness to learn from others. The giant woman's presence remained a steady reminder of the bonds he had formed, and he knew that tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to grow. The night passed quietly and John awoke to another sunrise, feeling the excitement of the day ahead. He had been accepted by the tribe, but acceptance was not the end. It was the beginning. He would continue to learn, to listen, and to act with honor. And in doing so, he would honor the trust placed in him by the giant woman and the community that had decided his place among them. The desert stretched endlessly before him, full of mystery, life, and possibilities. John knew that he was ready to face whatever came next, guided by the lessons, the trust, and the connections he had built in this hidden world. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, casting long shadows across the canyon. John awoke to the soft murmur of the tribe beginning their day. Birds called from the cliffs above, and the faint sound of water trickling from the stream nearby added a peaceful rhythm to the morning. For the first time since he had arrived, John felt completely part of this place. The giant Apache woman was already awake, standing silently at the edge of the clearing, her eyes scanning the horizon. She turned to him and gave a small, encouraging nod, a gesture that reminded him of the journey he had taken to reach this point. Today was the day the tribe would decide his future. Though he had been accepted to live among them, there was still a sense of anticipation in the air. The elders gathered near a larger fire, arranged in a circle with John at the center. Nayeli stood beside him, his presence calm yet commanding. The giant woman stayed close, her towering figure protective but gentle. John could feel the weight of their gaze, not in a threatening way but as a quiet assessment. Every move, every expression mattered. He had been tested in courage, intelligence, and respect, but today the tribe would decide if his heart and spirit were truly worthy. Nayeli began to speak, his voice carrying easily across the quiet desert. "John," he said, "you have proven your courage, your intelligence, and your respect for the land and our people. You have completed our challenges, observed our ways, and learned our lessons. But the final decision is not about tests. It is about understanding who you are, what you value, and whether your spirit aligns with the ways of our people." John listened intently, nodding slightly. He felt both nervous and excited. This was the moment he had been waiting for, though he had not known it until now. The elders spoke one by one, each offering their perspective. They spoke of the giant woman he had saved, of the bravery he had shown, and of the patience and respect he had demonstrated in learning their ways. John felt a mixture of pride and humility. He realized that he was not being judged solely on physical strength or cleverness, but on the content of his heart. Each word of the elders carried weight, echoing the lessons he had learned over the past days. It was clear that they valued not only his actions but also his character, his willingness to listen, and his ability to adapt to their ways. Then the giant woman stepped forward. Her eyes met John's, and he felt a wave of reassurance. Though she spoke little, her presence alone carried meaning. She described his actions silently through gestures and expressions, emphasizing the courage and kindness he had shown. She had vouched for him, using her influence within the tribe to convey the trust she placed in him. John realized that he had not only saved her life, but he had also gained her respect, and in turn, the respect of her people. It was a bond stronger than words, built on mutual trust and understanding. Nayeli nodded after her silent explanation, turning to John. "The decision is clear," he said. "You have shown that your heart is true. You have proven that you can walk with us, learn from us, and contribute to our community. From this day forward, you are part of our tribe. Your future is no longer your own alone. It is shared with us. You will live, learn, and grow here among your new family." John's chest swelled with emotion. Relief, gratitude, and joy all washed over him at once. He had entered the canyon as a stranger, and now he was accepted, not just for what he had done, but for who he had become in their eyes. The tribe celebrated with a quiet ceremony, simple but filled with meaning. John joined in, feeling a deep sense of belonging as he followed the traditions and rituals of the community. The giant woman guided him through the motions, teaching him the subtle gestures, the respectful ways to move, and the importance of each action. John felt connected to the rhythm of the tribe, the harmony of their lives, and the wisdom passed down through generations. For the first time, he understood that acceptance was not simply granted, it was earned, nurtured, and respected. Over the following days, John settled into life among the tribe. He learned more about their customs, their stories, and their way of living in harmony with the desert. He helped gather water and food, tended small tasks around the village, and shared moments with the children and elders. Each day brought new lessons, new opportunities to grow, and new ways to contribute. The giant woman remained his guide, a steady presence that helped him navigate the delicate balance of trust, respect, and responsibility. John felt a sense of purpose he had never known, and he embraced it fully. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in brilliant oranges and purples, John sat with the giant woman near the stream. They watched the water reflect the colors of the sky, the soft ripples moving gently over the stones. She pointed to the horizon, then to him, and finally to herself, as if reminding him that life was about connections between people, land, and spirit. John nodded, understanding that the bonds he had formed were not only personal, but also part of a greater story, one that would continue long after this moment. As weeks turned into months, John became an integral part of the tribe. He was no longer just an outsider who had passed through. He was a trusted member, a learner, and a helper. The giant woman's guidance continued, and he gained deeper understanding of the desert, the people, and the ways of life that had been preserved for generations. He realized that the lessons he had learned were not just about survival, they were about respect, empathy, and living in harmony with the world around him. The tribe had given John a new home, a new purpose, and a new family. Every day he reflected on how one simple act, saving the giant woman, had changed the course of his life. What had begun as a moment of courage and instinct had become a journey of trust, learning, and belonging. John understood that life could turn in unexpected ways, and that the choices we make, even small ones, could shape our destiny in profound ways. One morning, John stood on a cliff overlooking the canyon, the wind brushing his face, the sun warming his back. The giant woman stood beside him, a silent companion and guide. Below, the village stirred to life, children playing, elders teaching, and the tribe moving in harmony with the land. John felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had come into the desert as a stranger, and now he was part of something larger than himself, a community, a family, and a way of life that would shape him forever. As he took in the view, John reflected on the journey he had undertaken, the fears he had faced, the challenges he had overcome, and the trust he had earned. The tribe had decided his future, and in doing so, they had given him more than acceptance. They had given him a purpose. He knew that his life would never be the same, and he welcomed it with an open heart. He had learned that courage alone was not enough, that respect and understanding were equally important, and that true belonging came from living with honor and empathy. That evening, as the stars appeared over the desert, John sat by the fire with the tribe. The giant woman sat close, her presence steady and reassuring. Naeli spoke softly of the path ahead, the lessons yet to be learned, and the responsibilities John now carried. John listened carefully, understanding that his journey was far from over but that he was ready for whatever lay ahead. He had been tested, he had learned, and he had been accepted. His life had changed forever, not by chance but by courage, respect, and the choices he had made along the way. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, John felt a peace he had never known. He was part of the tribe, a trusted member and a student of their ways. The giant woman's eyes met his, and he felt a silent understanding pass between them, a bond forged in courage, trust, and shared experience. John knew that the desert, with its vast skies and endless horizons, had given him a second chance at life, a new beginning shaped by respect, bravery, and connection. He closed his eyes, listening to the whispers of the desert, the wind, the water, the faint calls of animals in the distance. He realized that he was no longer just a traveler or a stranger. He was part of something eternal, something deeper than himself. The tribe had decided his future, and in doing so, they had guided him to a life filled with meaning, purpose, and belonging. John understood that his journey would continue, but for the first time, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be.